What made Roman emperors never worry about the future? You've been living wrong if you haven't learned this from Epictetus. And in the next 3 minutes, you'll understand why Marcus chose silence over arguing. Hey guys, tonight, we enter a world quieter than the one you live in now. Imagine standing on a pale marble street at dawn in ancient Rome. The city hasn't fully woken yet. You hear the faint creak of shutters opening. You see olive sellers arranging baskets. And there, in the golden morning light, you walk alone past a courtyard where Marcus Aurelius once stood barefoot on cold stone, dictating thoughts to a quiet scribe with ink-stained fingers. You carry the sting of something someone said, maybe not to your face, but somewhere behind your back. It simmers. You want to correct it, explain yourself, maybe even strike back with your own version of the truth. But Marcus didn't. He chose something else. And you might not endure this choice. You might think silence is weakness, that to say nothing is to allow falsehood to grow unchecked. But you'd be wrong. Tonight we're going to practice a kind of power that never raises its voice, only its understanding. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also post your location and local time in the comments. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. To understand this better, let's begin not with philosophy, but with the very real ache of being misjudged. It doesn't matter how strong you are. When someone talks behind your back, especially someone close, it hits something fragile. A place where your value, identity, and sense of fairness feel cracked. You replay it in your mind. The unfairness, the misrepresentation, the nerve, and most of all, the helplessness. A Stoic would tell you, you're not wrong to feel it. You're just wrong to think it deserves a reaction. Marcus once wrote, "When another blames you or hates you or people voice similar criticisms, go to their souls, penetrate inside, and see what sort of people they are. You'll realize that there is no need to be racked with anxiety that they hold any particular opinion about you." But that's hard, isn't it? Because when it's your name in someone else's mouth, when your story is no longer yours, it feels like something is being taken from you. Here's where the Stoics differ from our instincts. They believed the only thing that can truly be taken from you is your inner peace, and only if you allow it. Scholars still debate whether Marcus was writing these meditations for strength or for survival. As emperor, he faced constant betrayal even within his own court. Senators who dined with him by candlelight spoke against him the next morning. Generals who pledged loyalty conspired in shadows. Yet Marcus responded not with counter-rumors or declarations, but with discipline, stillness, a retreat into the self. When the world throws noise at you, the Stoics say, don't add to the chaos. So tonight, when you recall what they said, pause. Let the sound dissolve into silence. Let the stillness remind you of who you are. Because you are not the noise. You are the calm behind it. You walk through that same Roman courtyard a little deeper now into morning. The air is cooler in the shade of a vine-covered archway. Somewhere beyond the wall, a servant sweeps dust from marble. You pause, hearing nothing but the soft rhythm of the broom and your own breathing. That's how a Stoic trains, not always in battle or debate, but in quiet, deliberate moments like this. What do you really lose when someone insults you behind your back? Is it reputation, status, pride? Or is it just the illusion that people are supposed to treat you fairly? The Stoics warned against trusting the world to be just. Not because they were cynical, but because they knew the world isn't yours to control. Only your reaction is. Seneca wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials. He wasn't just talking about physical suffering, he meant slights, betrayals, whispers. You become polished, not by avoiding insult, but by choosing how to respond to it. And still, the question lingers if you don't defend yourself. Don't the lies win? You ask yourself that, maybe even tonight. Marcus didn't think so. He believed that truth over time rises without a defender. But ego wants applause now. It wants vindication. Stoicism tells you to delay that desire. Better yet, to let it go entirely. And here's the part you may not want to hear. Silence is not passive. It's active restraint, intentional discipline. When Marcus was falsely accused of favoring corrupt advisors, he wrote nothing in reply. He didn't name names. He didn't plead his case. Instead, he doubled down on virtuous action, knowing that those who walk the path don't need to yell about it. Scholars wonder if this refusal to engage in gossip made him weaker politically. Perhaps. But spiritually, he became unshakable. So you picture yourself not in ancient Rome now, but in your own life at work, at dinner, in that group chat, or meeting where someone implied something behind your back. You catch wind of it. Maybe someone warns you. Maybe you overhear. Maybe it just reaches you like smoke through a cracked window. You want to storm in, clarify, fix the story. But then you remember this: a lion doesn't chase mice, and a wise person doesn't chase every rumor. You breathe in. You let the ego flare for a moment, and then you let it die. Because you are practicing something very few people ever master: the art of not needing to be right in every room. You are not made fragile by what others say. You are not broken by a sentence spoken in your absence. You are not less because someone failed to understand you. You are instead being polished, slowly, quietly, firmly, like Marcus in the courtyard, like Seneca in exile, like yourself right now, resisting the urge to speak and learning instead to stand still. You continue walking beneath the olive trees, the stones cool beneath your sandals, shadows dancing on your robe like flickers of thought. The sun begins to climb, warming the horizon with a quiet insistence. And with every step, you remember something Marcus once wrote to himself. If you are pained by external things, it is not they that disturb you, but your own judgment of them. It's a hard teaching. A bitter truth wrapped in calm language. You want to believe the problem is out there. They betrayed you. They lied. They whispered when they should have come to you directly. But the Stoics ask, what if the wound isn't where you think it is? What if it lives not in their words, but in your reaction? You reach a fountain tucked into a corner of the forum where the water flows endlessly over worn stone. That too is a lesson. Life will keep moving even when your pride begs you to pause and rage. The world doesn't stop for your indignation. It flows on like water. And so must you. Epictetus warned his students, "It is not events that disturb us, but our interpretation of them." He was once a slave, beaten and ordered around denied dignity, but he refused to let those facts define his inner world. He mastered the discipline of framing, of asking, what does this event really mean, not just emotionally, but philosophically. So tonight, when someone mocks you or talks behind your back, you might feel that familiar tightness in your chest. You might rehearse comebacks in your mind. But instead of acting, you pause and ask, what story am I telling myself about this insult, that I'm not respected, that I'm not safe, that my worth depends on their approval? And then without flinching, you challenge the story. You say, I am not here to be praised. I am here to be good. You say, I will not give away control of my peace to anyone's careless opinion. There's a story of Marcus Aurelius sitting beside the same men who had once criticized his military judgment, sharing bread with them at a war camp outside Carnuntum, not to prove a point, not to shame them, just to live his philosophy. He knew that vengeance is tempting but fleeting. Dignity, by contrast, endures. Some philosophers argue that this restraint weakened his authority, that Rome needed a more forceful ruler. But Marcus wasn't trying to be remembered as a tyrant. He wanted to be remembered as a man who controlled himself. Tonight, that's your invitation too. To choose your posture, not their poison. To say nothing, not because you're afraid, but because you're free. To trust that silence, when chosen from strength, is louder than any insult whispered in the dark. You walk away from the fountain back into the noise of life, but something inside you is quieter now, clearer, like still water. Because you realize the deepest power doesn't come from defending your name. It comes from knowing who you are so clearly that no one can shake it. The forum grows louder, now filled with footsteps and clamor. Merchants haggle over prices, soldiers clank in armor, and children dart between columns with laughter echoing behind them. You keep walking, your gaze soft, your breath steady. But inside, you return to the question Marcus faced nearly every day as emperor. What is truly within your control? You can't control who talks behind your back. You can't control how others misunderstand you. But you can control whether you respond with bitterness or with composure. One morning before the Senate convened, Marcus received word that a provincial governor had slandered him in letters. A lesser man would have punished the governor publicly. Instead, Marcus wrote nothing in return. He simply acted with greater integrity in the decisions that followed, until even his enemies began to fall silent in the face of his example. He had learned something essential: people may speak ill of you, but they cannot touch your virtue unless you let them. And Epictetus had said the same thing years earlier to students in his modest lecture hall in Nicopolis. If someone speaks ill of you, he said, live in such a way that none will believe them. The teaching is simple, the practice is not, because every part of you wants to leap in defense, to correct, to clarify, to fight back. But ask yourself, what are you fighting for? Your reputation, that's not yours. Your pride, that's fragile. Your peace, that's sacred, and that is yours. You pause beneath a marble archway. The sun filters through its cracks like time itself slipping forward. You realize in this moment how much energy you've spent in life trying to control things that don't belong to you. What people say, what they assume, what they whisper. But tonight you begin the work of letting go. Let them talk. Let them twist the truth. Let them misunderstand you. Your job isn't to correct every rumor, it's to live in a way that renders those rumors irrelevant. Scholars still debate whether Marcus should have cracked down harder on corruption in the Senate, whether his patience was a flaw. But Stoicism isn't about perfection. It's about principled imperfection, choosing to respond to messiness without becoming messy yourself. So the next time someone speaks your name with spite or leaves you out of the story entirely, remember what's yours: your choices, your character, your calm. The rest, let it drift away like smoke from a burnt scroll, there then gone. Because your dignity isn't found in argument. It's found in how you carry yourself after the insult has landed. You take one more breath beneath the arch, then step out into the open, not to prove anything, but simply to be silent, solid, and still. You turn down a narrower street, now the sounds of the forum dimming behind you. The cobblestones are uneven beneath your sandals, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps, some rushing, some steady. Yours are deliberate, calm. And yet as your mind wanders, you recall a moment not long ago when someone questioned your motives publicly. Their tone had been polite, but their words carried an edge dressed as concern. the kind that cuts beneath the surface. You didn't respond, not right away. But later their comment echoed in your head, and the silence you thought was strength began to feel like weakness. Marcus Aurelius knew that feeling. He once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." But what if your mind itself is the battlefield? This is where the Stoics drew a sharp line between the event and your interpretation, between what is said and what it means to you. A Roman senator once accused Marcus of being too lenient with his enemies, said he was weak, unfit for the throne. The emperor didn't flinch. He listened, thanked the man, and went on leading with the same quiet resolve. Years later, that senator found himself begging for mercy, and Marcus gave it not out of vengeance, but because mercy was his principle. You reflect on this now as the street winds between tall stone homes. Each window hides someone else's judgment, someone else's opinion, someone else's story. But those stories don't define you. And here lies a philosophical divide: should we correct the record when we're misjudged, or should we let truth unfold through action alone? Scholars argue both ways. Some point to Socrates, who chose death over altering public perception. Others cite Seneca, who carefully defended his reputation even as Nero's court conspired against him. You walk on pondering the same. When do you speak up? When do you stay quiet? The answer is never easy. But Stoicism isn't about easy answers. It's about learning to live with the discomfort of not always being understood and choosing virtue anyway. So tonight you reframe the question. Not why did they say that, but why did it bother me because their words didn't wound you? Your attachment to how you're perceived did. Let that attachment loosen like a tight thread, gently unwinding. Imagine it falling away behind you with each step until your burden is lighter, until silence becomes strength again. Marcus didn't demand praise. He didn't beg to be liked. He simply lived in alignment with his principles and let the rest follow. Now, as the street opens into a quieter square, you breathe that lesson in. The sky above is turning violet. A few stars blink faintly into view. You realize that not every insult needs an answer. Some of them are just noise in the marketplace, echoes of other people's fears. You don't need to echo them back. You are not their echo. You are the stillness after the storm. You sit now on a low marble bench, the kind Marcus himself might have rested on after long hours of counsel. The day's heat clings to the stone, but the evening air brushes cool across your skin. A soft breeze stirs the cypress trees behind you like whispers through a temple. As you rest your thoughts, return not to the critic, but to your reaction. The tightness in your chest, the clenching of your jaw, that flicker of indignation so fast you almost missed it. And you ask yourself, why do you expect others to act with kindness? This is where Marcus was brutally honest. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. He didn't say that to become cynical. He said it to be prepared. It's strange how often we're surprised by human nature, as though rudeness were some rare poison and not the ever-present pollen of society. But Marcus knew better. So did Epictetus. They didn't ask for a world of saints, they trained for a world of chaos. You feel the pressure inside your chest start to dissolve like a knot coming loose. You see now that when someone speaks harshly, they're not targeting you, they're just bleeding from their own wound. And you happen to be nearby. Does that excuse their words? No. But Stoicism doesn't demand that you excuse everything. Only that you respond as your best self, not your injured self. Seneca once noted that we shouldn't blame the stick that strikes us, but rather the hand that swings it. And even then, we gain nothing by striking back. Not unless our goal is to prolong the pain. But here's the ongoing debate: is this passivity, is letting things slide, a denial of justice? Philosophers still argue whether Marcus's tolerance was strength or naivety. Could he have prevented betrayals had he spoken up more harshly? Or was his silence what kept his inner peace intact during Rome's darkest hours? You weigh that question yourself sitting here as night settles around you. In your own life, there will be moments when your voice must rise, not in anger, but in clarity. But tonight is not that moment. Tonight, you are simply a student of reaction, of noticing the wave before it crashes. And as you watch the first torchlight flicker on a nearby wall, you remember the Stoics weren't perfect. Marcus Aurelius had his outbursts. Epictetus lost his temper with students. Even Seneca, calm as he was feared, death enough to write thousands of words against it. So don't expect perfection from yourself. Expect practice. You rise from the bench. Not because you're done thinking, but because the walk itself is part of the lesson. Stillness can be found in motion too. And with every step you leave behind, another thread of resentment. Another tangle of old expectations, another impulse that no longer serves you. Because the only thing truly in your control is your choice not to react with fire, but to hold the flame gently. You walk on steadier now. The night deepens, and inside you something else quiets too. You move through a quieter part of the city now where the market stalls have long since closed, and only the scent of olive oil and dust lingers in the air. There's a rhythm to your steps, a slow measured cadence that mirrors the pacing of your thoughts. Tonight, it isn't about winning arguments. It's about winning yourself back from the grip of emotion. You remember another passage one Marcus must have written after a particularly painful betrayal. The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. It's subtle, almost disappointingly simple. Not vengeance, not justice, just refusal. Refusal to become the same. You pass a woman muttering under her breath, dragging a sack of grain across the uneven stone. Her curses are not yours. Her suffering is not yours. But they could be if you let yourself absorb the energy of every sharp-tongued passerby. You'd end up full of noise that wasn't even your own. This is the cost of unfiltered reaction. You don't just lose your peace, you become a mirror for others' chaos. Scholars sometimes debate whether the Stoics were too internal. Did their philosophy foster apathy? If a man endures insult after insult with no reply, doesn't the world learn to walk over him? It's a fair concern. And yet the alternative, the world where every insult demands a defense, becomes a theater of constant war. There's a quiet kind of strength in letting people think they've won, when in truth you've refused to join their game. Marcus did this often. When generals whispered behind his back, when senators mocked his compassion as weakness, he didn't summon them for rebuke. He simply carried on. Because he knew what belonged to him, his mind, his values, his dignity. And that's what you're protecting now. You pass an old statue chipped and leaning slightly. No one repairs it. No one defends its dignity. And yet there it stands, weathered, unbothered. The pigeons do not insult it, though they soil it daily. This too is your model. You don't need to defend yourself from every attack. Sometimes you just need to outlast them, to stand still while the storm spends itself. The world will always have people who provoke people, who belittle people, who spit venom to see if they can get a rise. And when you don't rise, when you stay seated in your calm, you teach them something they weren't ready to learn. Not through words, but through poise. And that poise, unlike your reputation, your circumstances, or their opinion, is truly yours. You arrive now at a small stone bridge barely wide enough for two to cross. You stop in the center. Beneath a thin stream reflects the moon. You stare at your own face, rippling, distorted by the current, but still there. How often have your emotions distorted your view of yourself, and how many times has silence brought that clarity back? You take one slow breath, not for effect, not to impress anyone, just to center. To remember that a peaceful mind is not born, it is built. And tonight, you've laid another stone. The bridge fades behind you as your steps lead toward a narrower path, lined with olive trees and scattered moss. The city is distant now, its noise replaced by the gentle rustling of leaves and the soft crunch of gravel beneath your sandals. This, Marcus would say, is where the mind breathes again, out of reach of the crowd, yet still within its duties. You think back to how easy it is to judge others. The stranger who cut you off, the coworker who mocked your work, the friend who disappeared when things got hard. It's not just that people talk behind your back, sometimes they do worse. But Marcus reminds you, whenever you are about to find fault with someone, ask yourself the following question. What fault of mine most nearly resembles the one I am about to criticize? This isn't self-blame. This is a mirror, and it's heavier than it looks. It's easier to say they're the problem, but the Stoic path asks something far more difficult. What can I do better even when they are wrong? There's a small bench here, worn by time, warmed by sun, empty now in moonlight. You sit. Your hands rest palm up in your lap, a posture of both acceptance and awareness. You are not here to change them. You are here to control what is yours: perception, judgment, response. Marcus was no stranger to betrayal. His own general, Avidius Cassius, rebelled against him, declaring himself emperor. And how did Marcus react? With rage, with vengeance? No. He wept, not because of his ego, but because a friend had lost himself to ambition. Marcus forgave him, tried to reach him. And when Cassius was killed before Marcus could arrive, the emperor mourned. Quietly, deeply. You wonder, could you do the same? Could you feel pain without poisoning others? Could you carry sadness without infecting the room around you? That's the Stoic challenge. Not to become emotionless, but to become immune to being ruled by emotion. And still, scholars argue. Did Marcus suppress his pain too much? Did he write meditations to comfort himself or to convince himself? Was his composure real or rehearsal? But the very act of rehearsing calm again and again makes it more real, like tracing a groove into stone. With time, water carves canyons. So you sit, you trace the path of your breath. You reflect on those who've wronged you, and you let them float past like clouds. You name them not with bitterness, but with understanding. Because if you don't, you become the storm they summoned. And that is not who you are. You rise again. The bench left warm by your presence. The moon slightly higher now, casting shadows that stretch long across the path. You walk with more quiet now, not because the world has changed, but because you have. The criticisms, the slights, the gossip, they may still be out there. But in the fortress of your mind, there is order. And where there is order, there is peace. You walk further, letting the rhythm of your steps anchor you. One step, one breath. The Stoics would have called this a form of premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. You do not fear what might happen. You calmly rehearse how to meet it. In the distance, voices rise and fall. Laughter, maybe, or mockery. You're not sure anymore. What matters is your reaction, or rather your refusal to react blindly. You remember Epictetus's words. If someone speaks ill of you, do not defend yourself against the accusations, but reply, He obviously did not know my other faults, or he would not have mentioned only these. You smile. That kind of response is not weakness. It is strength dressed in humor and humility. There's a fountain nearby shaped like a lion's head. Water drips steadily from its stone mouth, forming ripples in the basin below. You lean over it, watching the surface settle again after each drop. Just like your thoughts, momentary disturbances followed by stillness. The water doesn't retaliate when struck. It reflects. It returns to calm. Could you be like that? Not passive, but reflective. Not cold, but controlled. Marcus Aurelius spent much of his life surrounded by flatterers, schemers, and cynics. And still he wrote, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. But none of them can hurt me." That's not pessimism, that's preparation. He expected trouble not because he wished for it, but because he wanted to be ready and not surprised. You think about your own mornings. Do you expect too much from others? Do you demand kindness from the unkind? Fairness from the unfair? Maybe the problem isn't that they fall short, but that you assume they should rise. Even the best fruit trees produce some bitter fruit, and yet we don't curse the tree. So tonight, as you walk through this quiet garden of reflection, you let go of your expectations. Not your standards, not your values, but your demand that others meet them without fail. That demand will always disappoint. But your discipline, your calm, need not waver. Scholars often wonder if this acceptance borders on resignation, if the Stoic way is too forgiving, too detached. But they miss something essential. To endure others with grace is not to abandon justice, it's to wait for the right moment, to act, not react. The fountain continues to drip. Your breath rises and falls, and the world for now is exactly what it is. Not what you wish, not what you dread. Simply what it is. And your power lies in your posture before it. You walk on. The path curves toward an open courtyard where the moonlight washes over ancient stone. You pause. Somewhere in this space, long ago, men gathered to debate philosophy, some with robes, others with armor. But they all asked the same thing. How do I live rightly in a world that so often feels wrong? Tonight, your question echoes theirs. How do I endure criticism without bitterness? How do I face cruelty without cruelty? You remember a phrase Marcus Aurelius returned to often: the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. And there it is again, calm, not as surrender, but as resistance. The Stoics didn't teach you to become numb. They taught you to become unmoved by praise, by insults, by everything that isn't truly yours. You take a seat on the cold marble ledge. The air settles around you. The night holds steady, and so do you. When others speak behind your back or laugh in your absence, you begin to understand. It is not your reputation they damage, it is theirs. You reflect on the life of Musonius Rufus, Epictetus's teacher. Exiled multiple times for standing up to emperors, he never responded with outrage. He lived in hardship, taught philosophy under trees, and when asked why he didn't complain, he simply replied, "Because it's not suffering unless you believe it is." That statement raises a deeper philosophical tension. Is it possible to be too tolerant? Should we always turn the other cheek? Or is there a time when a Stoic should stand up, speak out, and confront scholars, argue both sides? Some say Stoicism flirts with fatalism. Others point to Marcus, who led armies and reformed laws, not from anger, but from duty. The Stoic does not retreat from the world. He retreats from reactivity. He does not seek silence to avoid conflict. He seeks silence to prepare for proper action. So you sit here now preparing. Tomorrow may bring another insult, another unfair judgment. Someone may twist your words or question your intentions. You know this, but what is yours truly? Yours cannot be touched by their opinions, your choices, your integrity, your discipline. These are the parts of you that no whisper can weaken. A breeze stirs the edge of your sleeve. Somewhere nearby, a cicada sings alone into the night. You close your eyes and listen, not to defend, not to reply, but to remember what it feels like to be still and unshaken. Because tonight, you do not need to be understood. You only need to understand. The night deepens, and with it, your understanding. You rise from the courtyard and walk slowly toward the colonnade, the stone cool beneath your feet. The pillars cast long shadows, each one a reminder that strength can be silent. You recall how Marcus Aurelius would walk these same marble paths, his thoughts swirling heavier than his imperial robes. He was emperor, yes, but he was also a man wrestling with resentment, disappointment, and the constant hum of betrayal. And yet he rarely raised his voice. In Meditations, he wrote, "When someone does wrong, it's because they are mistaken about what is good. It's not out of malice, it's from ignorance." That Marcus believed was enough to withhold anger, enough to choose patience. Still, you ask yourself, what if they knew what they were doing? What if the cruelty was deliberate? This is where Stoicism sharpens its blade. It says, yes, perhaps they meant it. But does that require your participation in their weakness? If someone throws fire at your house, do you douse it with oil? You think of Cato the Younger, another Stoic who endured relentless attacks during Rome's final days. His enemies spread lies, mocked his virtues, even pushed for his assassination. But he did not plead. He did not scheme. He lived simply, served honestly, and when it came time to die, he chose death on his own terms rather than live under tyranny. Was that strength or stubbornness? Historians still debate it. Some say Cato was a martyr for virtue. Others say he was a Stoic fanatic, too rigid for the real world. But no one can question that he remained himself untouched by the rot around him. And so you consider what matters more, being right or being righteous. Would you rather win the argument or preserve your soul? You pass a torch-lit wall where the words of Cleanthes once hung, "Lead me, O Zeus, and you destiny, to the goal I am appointed." It's an old prayer, but tonight it feels new. Because being led does not mean being weak. Accepting your path does not mean you love it. It simply means you will not poison your heart with what you cannot change. They may whisper, they may shout, but you keep walking. You remind yourself the storm outside does not disturb the stillness inside. And it's that stillness that will carry you forward. You reach a quiet alcove, an abandoned corner of the palace gardens. The marble bench is cool from the night air, and as you sit, the scent of crushed herbs lingers, thyme, lavender, perhaps something older. You look out across the olive trees, their silhouettes still under the stars. And in that hush, you hear a truth that Marcus Aurelius whispered to himself so many nights. Be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved, and the raging of the sea falls still around it. But what does that really mean? It's not about detachment in the modern sense, not numbness or indifference. It's about trained indifference. The kind that says, I've already decided what matters. The rest is noise. The rumors, noise. The betrayals, noise. Even the praise, just another form of noise if you cling to it too tightly. You close your eyes and breathe. One slow inhale. One gentle release. You think back to the time Marcus faced betrayal from within his own ranks. A general he trusted tried to seize power, tried to divide the empire. People expected fury, swift revenge. But Marcus, he sent letters, reasoned arguments, forgiveness even. Why? Because vengeance would have cost him more than it punished the traitor. It would have stolen his peace. Here's the subtle Stoic point: you are allowed to hurt, but you're not required to hand that pain the keys to your behavior. Scholars have long argued whether Marcus was too lenient. Did his mercy invite more betrayal? Was his silence a strength or a strategic failure? But those questions miss the Stoic mark. Marcus wasn't playing political chess. He was practicing self-mastery. And now it's your turn. You remember a conversation you once had, perhaps with a friend, or maybe just in your own thoughts, about what kind of legacy you'd leave. And strangely, the memory returns now. Not as ambition, but as a quiet question. What if your greatest legacy is how you did not react? What if your calm was your rebellion? What if stillness is your shield? Another breeze stirs the garden. You imagine the torchlight flickering in the Roman streets outside the baker, closing his stall, a guard laughing by the gates, someone in an upper window whispering about someone else. Let them. Because right now, here under this sky, with your breath calm and your mind clear, you've already won. You rise slowly from the bench, walking the edge of the garden path, the faint crackle of gravel beneath your sandals. A nearby fountain trickles endlessly, like time itself, unconcerned, unhurried. Just as Marcus would have wanted your thoughts to be. You pause again, remembering another line he wrote to himself, as much a challenge as a reminder. Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been. At first glance, it sounds dismissive, as if pain, betrayal, insult could all be brushed away with a shrug. But this was not written in comfort. It was written in war camps. It was practiced while grieving the deaths of his children. It was meditated on while enemies plotted. This isn't a rejection of reality. It's a refusal to be defined by it. You know that feeling when someone spreads lies about you, twists your words, invents motives. You wake up at night imagining the conversations they're having without you about you. Your chest tightens, fists clench under the covers. You want to correct the record. You want to shout the truth. But Marcus invites you to ask, why? What does that truth need to be believed for? Do you live for the approval of those who do not understand you? Or do you live according to nature, your nature, honest, steady, unmoved? There's an old Roman phrase passed down from Stoic circles. He who angers you conquers you. And though it wasn't in the Meditations, it may as well have been. It's a cousin to Epictetus's harsher but wiser counsel: if someone speaks ill of you, live so that no one will believe it. But here's the real Stoic turn: even if they do believe it, you do not flinch. The question that haunts many thinkers is whether this sort of indifference leads to isolation. Does Stoicism encourage us to retreat too far inward, to disengage from public life? From Reputation, Marcus's life answers that. He did not hide. He ruled. He fought. He debated. But he did not need the praise. And when falsehood surrounded him, he stood still. You pause now at a carved stone pillar, your fingers tracing the worn Latin letters etched into the marble. You wonder how many centuries have passed since someone last stood here like you, seeking strength, seeking silence. And suddenly you see it clearly when others talk behind your back. You are being offered a sacred choice: to respond or to remain powerful, to let your peace be plundered, or to guard it like the emperor guards his gates. So tonight, you choose the latter. You remain still. You let the fountain trickle and your soul settle. Because the more still you become, the less they can touch you. The garden turns darker now, the light of the torches flickering faintly as the sky deepens into indigo. You find yourself at the colonnade where pillars rise like sentinels, their shadows long and solemn. You lean against the stone, cool and silent, and breathe in the stillness. This very moment is the reward of your restraint. You haven't lashed out. You haven't defended yourself in haste. And in that refusal to react, you've reclaimed your power. You understand now why Marcus kept reminding himself, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. To revoke your estimate, to downgrade an insult to irrelevance, to see gossip as mere breath carried on wind. How often have you imagined that if you don't reply, you'll lose something? Your status, your voice, your pride. But tonight you understand the paradox. It is your silence that often holds the most strength. It makes others wonder. It unsettles them. Because when you no longer scramble to correct the whispers, you rise above them. Scholars still wonder whether Marcus Aurelius ever directly confronted his enemies. Whether he ever called out the betrayal of Avidius Cassius, his own general who declared himself emperor while Marcus was ill. But what history does tell us is even more revealing. Marcus forgave him, not out of weakness, out of understanding. The man who had attempted to steal his throne was simply mistaken, carried away by fear, rumor, or ego. Marcus didn't need vengeance. He needed clarity. He wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." You consider that now as you stare at the stars flickering above the columns. Being unlike them, being still while they stir, being calm while they panic, being disciplined while they dissolve into noise. And suddenly all the stories, all the whispers, they feel smaller, like shadows cast on a wall, harmless in the face of your poise. The Stoics never promised that the world would be gentle. They promised you would be stronger. So you walk again. Slower now, more grounded. You recall a scene from Marcus's youth walking beside his teacher, Junius Rusticus, quietly absorbing his example. Rusticus didn't argue back. He didn't clamor for attention. He lived simply, consistently, silently. And in doing so, he left an imprint deeper than any shout ever could. What you endure in silence becomes your inner temple. And when others speak of you behind your back in dark corners or through careless mouths, you do not answer. Because your answer is your life, your discipline, your character. The pillars stand, the fountain flows, the stars shimmer, and you remain, as always, still. The path curves one last time beneath the olive trees, their silver leaves rustling faintly in the breeze. You place your hand on the trunk of one rough and ancient. It has stood here for generations, weathering storms, wind whispers, never speaking, never retreating. You ask yourself, could I be like this tree? Not passive, not weak, but steady, rooted, not bending to every careless opinion, not chasing down every word tossed into the wind. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." You repeat that to yourself now, not as theory, but as proof. You've seen it in your own stillness. When others talked behind your back, you didn't chase them with explanations. You didn't beg for fairness or try to win the crowd. You chose the harder road, stillness. And now you see what Marcus meant. That power is not found in the reaction. It is found in restraint. Scholars still debate whether this kind of Stoic endurance can survive in the modern world. Whether silence today is seen as wisdom or just weakness. Whether not defending yourself means you'll be misunderstood forever. But perhaps that's the wrong question. Perhaps the real measure of your strength is how long you can endure being misunderstood without letting it define you. You glance down at the ground beneath your feet. Solid, uneven, real, just like the Stoics taught. You remember Seneca's words? If you know that you are doing right, why do you need the approval of others? He too was no stranger to rumors, no stranger to political danger. And yet he held firm writing teaching, embodying his principles even as the world twisted around him. In the distance you hear laughter, soft, far away. Maybe someone else talking, maybe about you. But you don't flinch. You don't turn your head. Instead, you keep walking, your mind centered in a place they can't reach. You realize something in this quiet moment when you don't defend yourself. You give yourself room to grow. You aren't playing a game. You aren't competing in a popularity contest. You are living deeply and deliberately like the Stoics who came before you. The olive tree remains silent. So do you. And in that silence, something powerful grows.